Hey guys, Ryan here at Signature Edits, and today I'm going to take you behind the scenes to show you how I cull and edit an entire engagement shoot in under 30 minutes. Let's do it. Alright, so the time is 10:36 and we are ready to go. The first thing that I'm going to do is open up Photo Mechanic. That's the program that I use to cull my photos. You can use Lightroom if that's what you have, but Photo Mechanic is faster. So Lightroom, you might have a pause between images while they're loading, that sort of a thing. Photo Mechanic, you'll see here once I pull it up, that we are just blazing through the images. So here we go. I'll get started. And I'm just going to go through, this is my first kind of look, and I'm going to grab everything that I kind of like as my first impression. Because it's an engagement shoot, it's not super important that I take quite as much time as I would with a wedding. Obviously, I'm going to get all the good shots while still getting through it pretty quickly. So I'm just going through here and grabbing the shots that I like the most. A lot of walking. And things that are repetitive, I'm just kind of going to grab one from the set. So I'm not going to grab 5 photos from this exact pose. I'm just going to grab one, maybe 2 if there's 2 different expressions. Great, there's some laughter, they're having fun, but we're still pretty similar here, so I'm going to keep going. Great, that's kind of neat little detail there. Nice. And I did grab those 2 there from the same set, but that's okay. We've got a laugh and we've got a smile, and they can choose later on which they like most. Great, looking good. And you can see how amazingly fast Photo Mechanic is as compared to Lightroom, where you're waiting a second or two a photo. That makes a big difference when you're trying to edit something quickly. Imagine going through a wedding that has 4,000 photos. Well, in Photo Mechanic, you can do that in probably 30 minutes, whereas in Lightroom, it would take me a couple of hours for sure. So it's worth it to me. It's a couple $100 to buy the program, but if you're doing a lot of shoots and you need to get through images quickly, I have not come across anything better. Great, that's kind of funny. Good. Nice. And once in a while, I'll grab one, I'll realize there's one better further out. These are pretty funny, they had a lot of fun. Wow. Apparently she's pretty strong. So not a whole lot to see here. I'm just going for the emotions, the reactions, and I'm grabbing as much variety as I can. And I will do probably a second pass to narrow it down to my top kind of 50, 60 images. And it depends. Some photographers give their clients 100 images from the shoot. Some give them 30 or 40. I kind of like to give them all the unique photos, the ones that I really like, while at the same time not overwhelming them with 15,000 photos, and then all of a sudden they kind of lose their impact because instead of having one photo, they have to choose between 6, and sometimes having too many choices actually makes us less happy in the end. Great, they're doing some running, nice, got some cardio in. This looks a little awkward, I'm just not going to keep it, especially because he's hidden completely behind her. It would have been better to pose him over here to make him look a little more significant in the frame. Like this, he looks tiny and she looks huge because she's hiding him behind her, so we're just probably not going to keep any of those. Maybe that. There we go, that's better. You see how much of a difference that makes between this and this? He just looks like more of a man. Also, general rule, you want to have the woman look smaller in the frame. So I would have had him over here more and maybe had her stand slightly to the side. That would have made her smaller and appear thinner and made him just appear more masculine. So we're going to go through. Lots of good stuff. Man, there are a lot of photos in this engagement session. They went for it. That'll work. And again, I don't know why they didn't, maybe because she's a girl and she wasn't comfortable. It would have been better to have her in behind. Would have made her seem smaller again. Okay, so that's pretty similar. I don't know if I like one more than the other. I'm going to just go with that one because she's kind of smiling. Great. Okay, so you saw how fast that was. It is now 10:41. So what did that take? 4 minutes? And I just press that. Now we've got all the ones. I basically do a yes or no culling system. So I'm culling them. I mark it if it's a yes. Everything else by default is a no. So we've got 88 photos. I can narrow it down. I'm going to go through really quick and just make sure that there's not too much repetition. I don't really like that one. And that's not as good as this one. Great. It's okay. Anything that looks too cheesy or forced, I'm going to get rid of as well. So we got some major repetitiveness. I like that one better, so we'll keep that. That's out of focus. And because all the lighting is very similar across all these photos, it's not going to be too much more work for me to go through and edit, 80 versus 60. Great, so that was one more minute to just do a final pass there, call out a few, and I'm going to copy selected photos. And what I normally do is I'm going to move photos, delete originals. I'm going to navigate to where I have those photos kept. Right now, everything is a bit of a mess. I'm going to have to move this over later to my backup hard drive, but normally I put them in a folder labeled selects, and I'll hit move. Great, and then the rejects, I'm going to copy them and put them in their own folder as well. And I'm going to label that rejects. And then that way I always have the photos. I don't actually throw them away in case it turns out that I selected one, because I am culling pretty quickly, and I sometimes select one that's out of focus, and then there's one that is in focus right next to it that I didn't select, so I keep those handy and organized. So that took just over 5 minutes to do the culling. I've got Lightroom pulled up here, and we are going to keep moving. All right, got my raws here. I'm going to import them into Lightroom. Perfecto, and normally I don't apply a develop setting on import or metadata because I like to do that once I actually look at the photos themselves. I'm not generating smart previews for performance because my Mac seems to run pretty well out of the gate here. However, if you have performance issues with your laptop or computer, you can make sure to do that. Generating previews will definitely make it faster performance. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find a preset that just works well, and I'm going to apply it to everything. Definitely the key to editing quickly is in batch editing. So right here I have the signature edits presets. We've got 4 in our Genesis pack, and I'm just looking through to see what works the best. I think that signature edits 01 is going to work the best, and here we have 3 variations plus a night. And basically the pluses are just how desaturated the greens are. That's the main difference that's happening here. So I'm going to go with maybe +1. That's a nice middle ground, and I'm just going to sync that across. I'm also going to set this photo to auto white balance because I find in general Lightroom does a better job at auto white balance in post than your camera does in the moment. And we're just going to sync everything across. I haven't made any adjustments except for that. So now every single photo is going to be set to auto white balance and have that preset applied. Great. So now let's get through it and start editing. So in general, I'm just going to go through and I'm going to adjust my exposure. I'm also going to adjust the contrast and just do kind of a master adjustment because I am noticing that in general, these photos are looking a little bit too contrasty. So we're just going to dial that back a little by pulling the blacks up, maybe the contrast down a little bit, adding maybe a little bit of dehaze. And one other thing I'm going to do is the grain is pretty strong in these presets, and I like to start with less, and I can always add more, so I'm going to take the size down and the amount down. Then I'm going to sync those once more across everything and get started going through. From here, now that I've got my base changes, I can basically just go through, adjust my exposure, maybe do a couple of local adjustments here and there as required, and I'm good to go. So one thing I am going to do as well, just a master change, I'm going to take my vignette and the correction under lens corrections, I'm going to take that down to maybe like 70. This is just a personal taste thing. I find that Lightroom goes a little bit heavy on correcting the vignette, and so I'm going to want to make sure that that is reduced a little bit. Great. Okay, now I'm going to go through and I'm going to edit these bad boys. And you'll notice that I'm using the keyboard shortcut. So I'm using the plus and minus to adjust my exposure. That's a really quick Lightroom trick you can use. And I am holding shift, and that'll actually let me do it in bigger increments and just save me clicking more. We're going to sync the white balance across these 2 photos because they're from the same setting. It saves me some time. Great. And one last little thing that I can do, this is what I do on most of my photos for adjustment layers. This is all I do. I grab a radial filter, I'll grab the contrast and take it down and just invert it. So now there's less contrast in the middle or wherever I move this filter, and you'll just see it very, very subtly brightens what's going on in the middle here. So that way I can actually brighten the subjects just a tad while having it really, really be transparent and quick to apply. You can see how quick that is. Maybe take the exposure down a little on that one. And I'm just going to go through like this. This one's looking a little bit blue, so I'm going to take that and warm it up a little bit. Yeah, maybe darken it. Great. And there's really not a whole lot of fancy editing going on here. I'm just taking this radial filter just to brighten up the couple a little bit. And here and there, you'll see there are some adjustments that I'm going to make as it's required. But my main thing is I want to do the most efficient work possible. I still want to do a great job, but I want it to be efficient. So I don't want to have to do extra work by individually doing my images. So this one, her skin's looking a little bit pink. So I'm going to add some green, cool it down a little bit, lower the contrast, and reduce saturation. And that's just a quick little brush that I tend to use when I'm finding that skin is looking too saturated. It'll brighten it very slightly and reduce the saturation and the amount of red by just adding some green back in. Great, and we'll paste our radial brush on here. Looks good. I don't really need this radial brush, but it will help me just add a little bit more focus onto the couple by making it darker. And one thing I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to grab my texture brush. If you buy a Signature Edits pack, they come with this nice workflow of pre-made brushes, so you don't have to get your settings for every single brush. You've just got some already pre-saved. Or you can make your own just by pausing the video and copying that setting if you like the way it looks. You can see what a simple edit it is. Here's the original, and here's after with that preset and just one little radial filter applied. I'm going to copy that, save me the time of moving it. Good, and our skin's looking a little bit saturated here, so we're going to do the same thing as before. Saturation, bam, contrast down. Just like that. It's subtle, but it works. Keep it easy when you can. That's maybe looking a little bit yellow actually, so we'll just take the white balance down a little. Great, and because we don't have any skin tones, just to add a little interest here, I'm going to go to my texture brush again. Oh, texture brush, but with my adjustment brush. There we go, and you can see we're just adding a little bit of texture, making it maybe a little more interesting to look at. And we could even paint a little bit on them just to add some sharpening. Great. And we'll do the same thing on this one. Take my flow up a little, save me some time. Perfect. Once more, there we go. So that was just that radial filter, made that extra pop, brightens them up right away, so I can make it a little bit darker, get a little bit more of that sunset back. Now she's looking pretty red. I'm going to grab my skin brush, and I actually have a pre-made brush just to save on time. And that's pretty much it. I probably went too far on that one, just by taking too much of the white balance down. We can just copy paste because we've got the same kind of frame going on. That'll work. And I'm just erasing by holding Alt. And again, you might say, oh, that's a sloppy brush. stroke that you just did, Ryan. Well, that's true, it is. However, you can't see it. If you can see it, then I get really concerned. I hate that when you can see the brush showing up. But if I can't see it, it works. If it looks good to your eyes, it is good. That is a pretty good rule of thumb when it comes to editing photos. Now, of course, the real question is, are your eyes good? Because if they're not, I've had many edits where I think it looks great in the moment, and I come back and I'm like, what were you thinking? So developing your eye is definitely a process that comes with time. Great. And we're about halfway through right now. Making good time. Now I think I can see this brush. So we can delete that. Yeah, maybe not. See, there you go. That you can definitely see. So we'll just delete this so we don't have it added to every image here. Great. And again, super sloppy, but because it's a really subtle effect, you can't see it. You can't see that it wasn't perfectly placed in every way. Great, you can see how that radial filter just darkened the background right down and made them pop a little. And add a little bit of brightness to that. Awesome, and I can copy paste. I'm just not going to copy my brush effects. There we go. Looks great. And I don't feel the need to edit every photo. If for instance, the photo looks good right away, there's no need for me to go in and brush and do all sorts of fancy stuff, add extra work to what I'm doing. If it looks good, let's leave it. So here's our original. Here's with that preset and a radial filter applied. Maybe dial back the contrast just a little bit. These guys had so much fun at their session. It's great. Maybe a little bit of vibrance to that one. Let's do one in black and white just for fun. And sometimes if the photo doesn't look great in color right away, one strategy I have is, you know what, black and white can be nice once in a while, let's give that a try. And then if that looks good, no worries. There's no need to fight the image to be something it's not. And you will notice that these presets look really, really good just on their own without much tweaking. First off, that's good. That's something that not all presets do. However, that's also because the lighting conditions are very, very good. If you've bought these presets or you've downloaded other presets in the past and you're like, why don't they just work the way that these ones do? Well, it's because these photos were taken at sunset when the light was very soft. You'll notice there's no harsh shadows going on. You can't even see the sun in the sky. In general, you're going to get way better results from any presets when your light is good. So if you want to fix your presets, that's the first thing you should do. But one of the things that we did when we designed the presets is we looked at it and said, okay, how can we make these just work? Even if the lighting is terrible, even if it's a super sunny day at 12 o'clock and they've got huge shadows under them, how do we make these presets just work? And so that's why we designed them the way we designed them, so that they'd be fast, that we could move through and edit an entire engagement in an hour or a wedding in a couple of hours. Makes a big difference, especially when you're editing a lot of shoots. And one of the reasons that they're so flexible is if we add harsh lighting right here. One thing you can notice is the presets by themselves, when I first apply the preset, it's a little bit harsh. But we've got lots of wiggle room. We can take our contrast all the way down, or our blacks all the way up. We can take our whites all the way down. We can really, really bring back a lot of the detail from this image. And we have lots of options. Whereas some presets, when you buy them, the contrast is up here, the blacks are down here, the whites are up here, shadows are down here, and you don't have as much room to actually tweak things after the fact. So that's one of the reasons that these presets work well. But you don't have to use them. Use whatever presets work for you and whatever gives you the look you're going for. If you do want to try them, I'm going to put a free demo link in the description below, and you can check that out to download some free samples, see if they work for you the way you want them to. We'll cool that one down, maybe darken it a little bit. Great. She's looking a little orange here, so we'll just paint on there. And if you want to see what you're painting, you can just press the O key. That'll show where your adjustment brush is coming from. So if I press O here, it's a really quick way to see what's going on, because sometimes you don't notice that you've missed a spot or that sort of thing. Just brighten that up. Looks good. Okay, now this one, I'm going to take a little bit more time on because I think it's a great shot. Just add some desaturation, and we're going to grab this grass and paint on there, and we're going to switch to our texture brush. And if you find that the brush is too strong, too weak, you can always hit this little triangle and grab the amount slider, bring it up or down, and just dial it in where you like it. There we go. And then we'll just warm it up just a little bit because it looks pretty blue to me. And I'm not going to try and fight it and make it not blue at all. The reason it's blue is because there's a lake here and there's a mountain here and it's reflecting all this blue light. So no matter what I'm going to do, it's going to stay blue, or it's going to just look unnatural to your eye. So I'm not going to fight and try and make my image something it's not. That is just a quick little tip from personal experience of trying way too hard to make something look a way you want it to when the photo originally didn't look like that. You'll find you just get frustrated and it looks silly. Great, this is okay. No, it needs to be warmed a little bit. I might do that in black and white actually. Try that, add a little bit of dehaze, darken it down. Do one more with the grass, same thing. Awesome, these are looking a little bit warmer than our other photos, so we'll just take that down a little bit in white balance. And we're going to switch that brush to our skin desaturator. There we go. That's better. Nice. You'll see we're almost all the way through here now. And take a little more time on this one and just do another layer of that contrast. But this time I'm going to use it to add texture outside of where they are. Great, and we'll dial it back a little bit by pressing this triangle, bring the amount back. Here's before and after. Awesome, this one his eyes are actually closed, so I can delete that. We got one last photo, and I actually wish that they had had her sit up on here and him in front. It would have made him look, again, larger in the frame. But it's still a great shot. I'm going to see if I can get the sky back. No, it's already blown out, so I'm just going to leave it with them nice and bright. We're missing a little bit of contrast from where he is facing into the sun, and there's some lens flare going on. So what I'm going to do is just reset this brush, add a little bit of dehaze and contrast, and paint that on him. Now obviously that looks way too intense, so we'll dial that back so that it's subtle. Dehaze can be your best friend or worst enemy. You decide. Okay, so that's our entire session. We're going to export it. The way I normally do it is because I'm using the Signature Edits presets. It comes with a print preset, but if you want to copy my settings, you can go ahead and just set it. I find quality around 80 is great. Image sizing, we just leave that full size, matte paper, sharpening on low, and I export it to its own folder, and I will label it Sean and Laura, client print, so I know what it is. And we'll rename the photos Sean and Laura engagement and export. Okay, so that took a minute. We are now finished exporting from beginning to end inside of Lightroom. That took 18 minutes to edit these images, plus the 5 minutes it took in Photo Mechanic, for a grand total of 23 minutes from beginning to end with this engagement shoot. Now, obviously, not every session is going to have perfect, ideal lighting. It might take a little bit more finicking from photo to photo, but I hope this was a good just demonstration of how quickly it can go when your lighting is great, when you're using presets that you know you're familiar with, and when you're just taking your photos, adjusting with keyboard shortcuts your exposure and white balance, and then using transparent effects that don't need to be super complicated to get the job done. If this was helpful, please make sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to try out these presets, you can download them in the links below for free. All right, take care.